Thank you. Well, we are back about records review. We our last Cultivate Learning webinar earlier this month, we went over what records review looks like now and hit on some of the common questions that we get, and we just needed some more time to unpack more of those questions, revisit things. And so this session really more is a Q&A. We've gotten some questions from you all that have been on a Jamboard, and so we've got those here to answer for you, but also want to make the space to get your even ideas and recommendations about some of these things that are larger issues that we would need to work with our strategy folks on. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide.
Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we just really wanted to center ourselves as we're entering in the space, and just a lot of appreciation for the deeper dive and hold this. You know that we're fans of Elena Aguilar's work. And this quote, one of the primary goals of transformational coaching is to empower educators to make decisions on their own that further the learning and the success of all children. And when I came across this, we were talking and I came across this quote, and it just really kind of spoke to me about the why of this work, the why, kind of the big picture of what we're trying to do intentionally with early achievers. And specifically today, you know, we're focusing on records review and kind of the why behind that, right? It's one way that we can, as advocates for children and families, begin to kind of move the work in a way that really connects to some of the best practices or evidence-based practices as well, or practice-informed practices, I'll say, to get to our intention around providing an early learning experience for children and families that really sets them up for success, to thrive in the future. And so there's a lot of research around that. And we know that some of those primary things are around, you know, environments and interactions. And part of like the how we do this is also adding components to records review, right? Where we can engage in policy conversations around reflection. And I just want to say kudos to the team here, to all of the coaches, because I heard some awesome feedback that I'd like to share that was shared with me. Dieta's not here with us, but she recognized the early achievers coaches and saying that it really stood out, you know, when the Cultivate Learning team is reviewing policies and procedures. They could tell where there was a lot of interactive reflection, discussion, and dialogue. And so just kudos to you, because it's showing in your work. We're seeing less and less of kind of cookie cutter policies and more intentional policies that really invite providers to share their why around their philosophy. And so just kind of wanted to center the conversation that reflective practice and reflective teachers really do help, you know, promote all of these high quality factors that we're pushing for in our work as family advocates. And so Elena Aguilar just really brings it home for me, Dawn. So I wanted to take a moment to share that. Thank you for sharing your space.
I mean, Sandy, we are with you at Cultivate, our QR team. Like that is the center of it, right? This next slide, we had a picture of a family picture, really to convey that same message that a lot of because of the evaluation that's going on, folks have been back out in the field and really have been, I think, touched and impacted by the things that they're seeing. And even though records review really puts us in a place where we are looking at the details and we are getting into the nitty gritty, big picture, we are all here for the same reasons. And I love that you put this reminder in here right at the beginning to help really center us and focus us on why we're here. Even though we're going to get some nitty gritty, this is the real reason. You're
Yeah.
here for these kids and families.
Yeah, let's hold up that slide, Miss April. If we can go to the next slide, I love what you guys decided. It really does center our why, right?
Yes, it really, really does. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I'm going to jump in and talk about our feedback that we got from March. So if you remember in our March webinar, we talked about records review, and we also invited some feedback from you all regarding the guide to the records review tool, and some of the other tools that we're using for records review. And in doing that, we sent you all a link to a Jamboard. Thank you so much for those of you that have contributed to that. We received lots of great feedback and questions. And right now it's early adopters, so it's the time to provide feedback. So if you have anything else that you want to share, we're going to keep that Jamboard open for you. And also, as we're going through today, we'll refer to that. We'll be answering lots of the questions that were in there and talking a little bit more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to that Jamboard in the chat. And as you look at that, you'll note that I have moved all of the comments that have been addressed either or will be addressed today in the webinar, or we have addressed them in the guide to the records review tool, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And those have all been moved to the bottom of the Jamboard in orange. So if you are adding something new, just add it up to the top area, and that way we know it's something that's been newly added. So here is the link for that. And next slide, please. All right, so just another reminder that the Jamboard will be open until May 3rd. So we're going to keep that open for another week for you. So please add your feedback and questions, and we will go ahead and incorporate those into our work. And this is just a reminder of our Early Achievers Quality Standards and talking about how your coaching really supports these quality standards. So framing our work in a positive light, the quality standards are compiled and recognized throughout the variety of components in the quality recognition process, but you're supporting these standards all the time in your coaching work. So today we're talking about records review. And as you're supporting programs through the records review process, you are supporting them with these quality standards and implementing these quality standards. So just kind of a big picture reminder that everything is connected here that we are doing. And now we're going to get into Q&A. So these next set of slides here are questions that came directly from the Jamboard. So you'll kind of notice as we're going through, you'll see a question and then an answer on each slide. So the slides may look a little bit wordy. The reason we did that is so that you have an opportunity to see word for word the questions that were in the Jamboard and then the answer there. So you can revisit that after today's webinar, or maybe people who aren't here, or if you have any other questions, please feel free to use the chat, unmute yourself, put them in the Jamboard, whatever works best for you. So let's get into our first set of questions. All right. So we had some general questions. And the first one was about programs wanting to know if there are options for review before completion or correction if they missed points after they submit for records review. So we're hearing that some programs do feel like they met the expectation but didn't word the policy correctly. And we do understand that this is an issue. And there was some questions about language and not communicating, not feeling comfortable communicating in English. And just as a reminder, the documentation for records review does not have to be submitted in English. It can be submitted in whatever language the provider is comfortable with, and we will accommodate that. We will work with any language that is submitted. Another question was about, will there be information about why criteria were not met? And yes, so in the report, the records review report, there will be a reason if a criteria was not awarded. It'll provide a reason why. And if further clarification is needed, you can always email the SQL inbox, which that's the Cultivate Learning Early Achievers inbox, cqel@uw.edu. And then there's some questions about supporting programs and developing policies and meeting those expectations. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We do have some support for policy development with our blueprint tools. And again, I'll cover that a little bit later in today's webinar. The second question was, what do you say in the additional information box? So one of the things was see merit. Is that something you're supposed to put in that box? Do you need to have dates of training in the information box? And the answer to that is you can use that box for whatever information you want to communicate to the quality recognition team as they are reviewing the records review submissions. So there's nothing required to go in that box, but if there's something additional that you would like to include, you can include that there. Just keep in mind that if you're entering dates or writing the policy in the additional information box, the actual documentation or like the handbook or the certificate would still need to be submitted. So you can't use that additional information box to copy and paste the policy in there instead of the handbook. But you could say, for example, if you were talking about screening and the screening was in your family handbook, you could put in that additional information box what page it's on. So that's not required, but it's helpful as we're going through and looking at these. If it's on page 24, then that helps us kind of go right to it. Any questions so far on that? All right, I'm going to hand it back to Dawn for our next slide.
Okay. So we have some alignment tool clarifications here. There's two of them. There's the WA Kids alignment tool and the curricular alignment tool. So for the WA Kids alignment tool, when there's an assessment other than Washington Kids, the TSG is used. This form is used to align a formal ongoing assessment to the Washington Early Learning Development Guidelines. And in the guide, that we want you all to have access to. We also put the page numbers on here as well, so you all can always have access to that. But that's in the ongoing assessment section 3. It's page 11 of the guide. And then for the curricular alignment tool, this is where we spent a lot of time discussing in our last webinar. When a curriculum is not included on the approved list, this form is to align a curriculum to the Washington Early Learning Development Guidelines too. And that's on page 19 of the guide. And the last time when we were talking about this, you all raised a lot of challenges that are currently happening with this, especially around the equity ones. And so what we wanted to do was have you all share those, but we want to be able to give a list to our strategy table so we can have some discussions around what these challenges are and also what your recommendations might be. At Cultivate Learning, we don't we create these materials through the guidance that we get from DCYF, and what we can do is also collect what your challenges are going to be and go through that route to try to do something about it. Because we heard you, like there is inequity when creative curriculum is an expensive curriculum or high scope is an expensive curriculum, and not everyone has access to that. That's also on the approved list, so they don't actually have to do the CAT. So if you can't afford it, then you also are doing the CAT. So there are quite a few things on that. So what we want to do is we added some pages to the Jamboard. And we'd love for you all to take some time now, and let's see, which pages are those?
Dawn, it is the last page.
It's the last page. Okay.
Yeah, it's page 15. So there's arrows up at the top of the Jamboard. If you navigate all the way to the right to page 15, you'll see a page that says Alignment Tool Challenges and Recommendations.
Okay. So we want to take some time right now for you all to record some of those, but also what are the challenges and questions you have coming up around these two alignment tools? And then what are some of the recommendations that you have? and Sandy, I know there's a lot that you've been thinking about here too, so please, you jump in at any point in time with anything you might want to add.
Thank you, Dawn. I was wondering if maybe let's give people right while they're thinking about it, because you gave such a good explanation. If we want to capture some thoughts first, and then we can come back. Does that work? Because I was actually thinking, like, my brain was there, and so I know people are probably there with you. So just to not interrupt that flow.
All right.
Is that good?
That sounds good.
Okay.
So I'll give you all a couple minutes of thinking and writing time.
Yes, I will put the link in the chat again. There was just a question about that.
Amber, this is Leah from CCA. I just wanted to know, if you, are you seeing in the chat a couple people are saying they can't get into the Jamboard because there are too many people?
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. I
Okay.
wasn't aware that there was a limit.
I think there might be with certain types of accounts or certain levels
Okay.
of accounts, but I'm not sure.
I think they're on to us. If they see us using it, they're like, for a fee, we can let so many people in.
Well, and then also, like, if you could put your recommendations and your challenges right in the chat and or share them, and we'll get them recorded on there too. Either way, we want to hear we want to hear what those are, and any recommendations you might have
Yeah,
going forward, because there's early adopters.
it is.
You know, so this is the opportunity where we've got space to try to make some changes.
Thanks, Dawn. I think I'll pick up there. I want to remind folks that on the DCYF website, and we'll share the link after, because it's part of an update, that while we acknowledge there's a lot of changes, going on, that there continues to be an avenue for sharing suggestions, the suggestion box. And so that is still on the DCYF's website on the early achievers. It's kind of on the right-hand side, and it, asks if you want to make suggestions for improvement. And so I want to remind you of that as always an opportunity that's open for you, and really also to encourage providers If they'd like to suggest improvements to early achievers, that's another way that we can do that. This in particular, I know that this has brought up a lot of discussions, this quality standard around the alignment tool and the curricular alignment tool. And while the standards remain the same and those are not yet open for revisions, we don't know what that would be like. What we do have control over is perhaps the way the tool is used and the way the tool is created. So if you have suggestions, knowing kind of, that we have some limitations, just some things that we don't know what's going to be open for revisions, let us know. If you feel like, gosh, it would be so helpful if the curricular alignment tool did this instead of this. Give it some thought and let us know, because Amber and Dawn they're really eager to kind of see some of your ideas and see what we can kind of create together. So think about that when you're thinking about the tools. It's always helpful to hear from you what's helpful with that tool. Or if you keep jotting down and creating your own little checkbox under it or your own little notes section, I know I was big on that. Let us know, because maybe that's something that we could embed into it. So, Dawn, was that, I don't know, I just also wanted to suggest like ideas for the tool. Is that also what you were looking for? Yeah.
Yes, that, and also like the challenges that are around curriculum in general too, that you all, especially that we've been hearing coming up, and what we were getting some of these questions around too.
Oh, I'm laughing out loud. Angie, stop it. That is too much. I'm gonna need Angie to use the feedback link on DCYF in all languages because it's limiting her. Angie, you have awesome ideas. So other ways that you can share those, connecting with your program manager, Michael and Leah. That's how we kind of keep a pulse on questions that are coming up statewide. And also we have weekly connections with the Cultivate Learning team, and the CQEL inbox is also another way that you can connect with the team at Cultivate Learning. So let's use all of the different ways. If you're like Angie and you have awesome ideas, more than what the limit is, but let's talk to them about the limit, because sometimes we're just in a idea generating mode, right? So I love that. We'll make sure to bring that up. Okay, we're seeing some suggestions already, Dawn, in the chat.
Lots of suggestions in the Jamboard too, so we appreciate that, and kind of quickly looking at them. Hopefully some of these questions will be answered today as well.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the sticky notes had a character limit. So it
Yes,
seems like I used to be able to just keep typing and typing, but I got cut off really, really quickly. And so part of the possible strategy is I didn't get to finish it.
You add another sticky note next to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I can do it.
That'll work. Okay.
or feel free to share here, Kelly, if you'd like. Since you're unmuted, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you want to edit on sticky, that works too.
I did also see that Jamboard will be going away soon, so we're gonna have to
Yeah.
come up with another.
Wow.
Yeah, Kelly, what were you? What were you?
Yeah, I would just like to say mine out loud instead of typing it again.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of programs that are working on records review right now, or even showing a lot of interest because they're just not there yet. But the couple that I have, well, one actually that is not using and one of the tools that they need to use the CAT in order to align their own curriculum to, which is kind of an emergent curriculum. Emergent meaning they don't plan it. They kind of, it's not truly emergent, but doesn't have anything to do with children's interests or anything like that. But that being said, part of the problem is that some of the fundamental things that they're asked to align the curriculum to they're not in agreement with. So I'm wondering if there could be a way of indicating why something doesn't align rather than, you know, your curriculum should align with all of these things. And if it doesn't, you may not get the credit. Could there be a place where they, and, not necessarily going to get credit for it, but at least explain why they don't think that that's necessary or why they are valuing something else over that, something like that.
If I could, can you give me an example? I mean, the idea would be that people would have an activity or something in their curriculum that they can write. We're not grading an essay or a thesis. Some people, it is okay to say that something isn't in place yet, or that, you're working on it. The idea of the CAT tool and, and the WA Kids alignment tool is really about thinking about aligning your curriculum. And if you're looking at the ELGs, for example, we would want, for example, to have something about literacy, or we would want to have something about me, myself, and my family, right? So I guess, yes, of course, but as someone who hopefully gets to an opportunity to adjust the tool, can you give me an example?
Well, you kind of just gave one. I think the ELDG is a really difficult document to ask people to align things to because of the nature of it's not a black and white kind of a document. It gives examples of things, and it's just, I have found in working with providers that it's difficult to first of all even navigate through. But once we get through that, it's really written in a way that describes specific areas of things that you would want children to be able to do, and then specific examples of that. And just wrapping providers' brain around aligning a curriculum to that. It's not a curriculum itself. So it's it's just a difficult task. It's much
Right.
difficult. It's much more difficult than aligning a curriculum to another curriculum.
It's definitely
So
our state guidelines, and if somebody wants to put some suggestions in the box of we do, I think the last time the guidelines were updated, I believe was 2012.
yeah,
So we're in, those need to be updated as well. And I think that the prior version, the benchmarks, were a little bit easier to align to, similar to what you're saying. But yes, definitely.
I think that's a critical piece.
Mhm.
It's hard to even talk about the ELDGs when we're talking about alignment because they don't match up that way. The information is presented completely differently, that kind of stuff. And I don't remember the 2006 or whatever it was, benchmarks. So I can't really speak to that part.
Thanks, thank you, Kelly. I think that
Mhm.
we're hearing some of those things from other regions as well, not just in the curriculum alignment tool, but also kind of in some of the video highlights piece. So
Yes.
I definitely am interested in learning more. So maybe reaching out and seeing if we can have like an emergent maybe coach meeting for those of you that have experienced that, so that we can kind of think through what might be helpful in having that conversation with our partners at Cultivate Learning, and seeing knowing that this is a point, like Jamie said, it's been a hot minute
Mhm.
since this, and it really is. I had the great privilege and honor of observing some wonderful coaches in action out in the Tri-Cities last week. I'm still smiling about it. And so I did notice that kind of in the video highlights situation. So The coaching was phenomenal. So just a shout out to those coaches, Anna, Stephanie, and Lori out in the Tri-Cities. I'd love to kind of just dig a little bit more and see what we can have to make that more streamlined process. And I love that our partners are open to that. So thanks, Jamie and Amber. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank
We
you.
wouldn't have got that from the sticky note. Absolutely not. So I think you would have needed 10 sticky notes and we still would have called you.
Thank you.
Can I just add about updating the ELDGs? It actually says in it that it's supposed to be updated every 5 years. So I mean, as far as we're giving feedback to DCWAF, we can mention gently that it should have been updated by now. Back to the curricular alignment tool. When I hear like providers' frustrations, one thing that I hear over and over is I put so much work into it, and if I just miss one thing, then I don't get the points. And I mean, it's worth 4 points. So I don't know how to sort of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like break it down more so that you could get partial credit. Does that make sense? So that if you get, I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't think it's coming out right.
I hear you though. It shouldn't be an all or none. That's kind of what
So I really do think we need to, I think that is a place. I saw someone comment that we need a training. Give me an example of someone who didn't get credit, who filled it out. I have yet to find someone who hasn't. It really just needs to be filled out. Like I have people who, who are, as Amber was saying, like they have different, different languages or whatever. And like you wrote 2 words in each of the sections and you can get credit. So I'm not under like, give me an example of someone who didn't do it.
I would
Email me. But
yeah, I will. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're if it's filled out and it's just thinking about this, like I said, like it can be that you can say, I don't have this in place yet, or I'm working on this, or giving an example from the ELDGs of like, this is an activity I do. It's really supposed to be like a thinking project, like thinking about how we're aligning and making sure that all the parts of the child's development is in your curriculum or in your assessment.
Yeah. Totally get that, Jamie. And I just want to add, it's to a lot of providers, it still feels like it's part of their livelihood and it's hard. It's been a hard shift to kind of move away from points, but that's a very true thing that coaches face. And so I don't want to ignore that. It is. I mean, I think this entire process, I mean, just to what we opened up with, the impact of reflective practice. And this is part of that. I appreciate you reminding that, it's turn in what you have, let us take a look. I think the big kind of change management support that we have in front of us in the coaching realm is getting people engaged. So again, your feedback is so helpful. If you have if you have ideas for, getting to the purpose of this, which is a reflective process, I've heard Amber say over and over, and Jamie, to that. So please do. Thanks, Amber. Thanks, Jamie.
This is Juliet, and I just want to add one piece just to frame is that the curricular alignment tool was originally created way back when to address the potential inequities of those who had an evidence-based curriculum and had the resources to purchase versus others who might use an emergent curriculum, but they have a process that aligns to supporting all of the domains of child development, which is really what the ELDGs are, even if the format needs to be updated. And so if a program can demonstrate that, I think that's what we're looking for, right? Rather than an all or nothing process. I also think filling it out will give coaches information to how to support that program and implementing elements that are considered high quality toward that curriculum process. but obviously it would be wonderful, and I think this is absolutely important to partners at DCYF too, if everybody had access and to like an evidence-based curriculum and the associated training to go along with that implementation so that it's implemented with fidelity, and that there's probably a lot of programs who are not quite ready to benefit from that even right now. So how do we focus on getting our programs there? And I think at Cultivate Learning, we kind of see the process of filling out the curriculum alignment tool as a process to help people better understand and reflect on that. And then, we can more successfully coach to get them ready to benefit. And or if they're using something that does align as, in all of the areas that we'd like to see, to give them that equity consideration if they don't have the resources to have gone through high scope training, for example.
That's great. Thanks, Juliet. And somebody just wanted to say ditto. Can you put that in the guide? I mean, you said that in 2 sentences. That would be super helpful. So someone's giving you kudos, and just let's bring that good wisdom over to the guide. So we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for jumping in, Juliet. And just kind of bringing it back around is that we don't want this to feel like just another task to complete and something that is very difficult and confusing. So if there are recommendations of ways that the curricular alignment tool can be more useful, please, add them to the Jamboard, put them in the chat, come off mute. We would love to hear your suggestions.
I would like a template for providers on how to fill it out.
Do you mean like an example?
Yeah, completely filled out with a mock program, with a mock curriculum that it
Okay.
aligns to. I think
Okay.
that would be helpful.
I will take that back to our team. Thank you, Kelly. Just kind of looking at the chat, seeing if there's anything else regarding the alignment tools here.
Angie has her hand up, Amber. Wonder
Okay.
if you have more time, we can unpack a little bit more. Awesome.
Go ahead, Angie.
So I'm just seeing in the chat, there's a lot of people saying, oh, I have the CAT for this curriculum, that curriculum. But my understanding is even if we have those alignments, that providers need to take them and personalize them or update them to reflect their actual practices. They can't just turn in an alignment that a curriculum developer has done. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And the intention behind that is really to make it a useful tool for each program.
Can I ask then why creative curriculum wouldn't need to go through the same process to make it useful for those providers? That's an equity piece that I have a lot of feelings around.
And there have been a lot of questions that have come up around that. We actually have a slide a little bit later in the presentation. Juliet or Jamie, do you want to speak to that at all?
I can just say that there was a previous process where there was a way to review the curriculum and have them added. There's also some national publications on, kind of accepted national curricula that demonstrates the high quality practices. And that's done every few years. In fact, there's a new publication that's coming out that I think this team will be really interested in. It's called A New Vision for High Quality Preschool Curriculum. And it's talking about the need to really pay attention to some factors that have been missed in previous, attempts to create curricula, particularly issues around language and other equity considerations. So I think there used to be a process where we could do that work of reviewing a curriculum, and then if it was an approved curriculum, they wouldn't need to do the CAT because they had already gone through the process of answering all of those questions. That is not a resource that we have at Cultivate Learning now. So it is an issue that is worth noting, that we don't have a current way to address that. So something that we should take a look at. And I think that maybe what the feedback may be is that regardless of whether you're using high scope, creative, project approach, Frog Street, like whatever it may be. I think what this team might be saying is everyone should fill out the CAT regardless. And I think that's a valid, consideration to put forward to the state.
Such a great point for advocacy, right? And why we should stay engaged in providing feedback. And your point is noted, Julia. I think it's a very important part for us to engage in. It just brings about a lot of thoughtfulness, again, reflection around practice. And I also hear and see some of the things that our coaches are saying. And so I'd love to unpack this question in the future a little bit more. Because I feel it's a both and. It's important to go through this process and we could see the benefits of that. And perhaps in just the formatting of the CAT, maybe there's a way that we can make it feel useful in holding a reflective conversation, whether or not it's aligned. And so anyways, I'm excited to see what that could be, because it's without a doubt just a really important piece. It really is kind of the intentionality behind setting the conditions for a high quality early learning experience that we can't skip. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Amber.
You. All right. I think, Patty, did you want to take a quick break?
Let me first stop sharing.
Okay.
Now, yes, we can take a break. Sandy, what do you think? I think we can take 10 minutes break. It's 2:57.
Yeah.
And what about if we come back at 2:10, at 3:10?
Okay, sounds good. I can
Let's do 3:10.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll put up a slide for us and I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope you can go get a good stretch. We'll see you at 3:10.
Switch gears a little bit here. There was a question that we received about what standards require documentation to be uploaded versus what standards require just policy to be uploaded. So here's kind of a slide that details out which ones require which. And all of this information is also available in the records review guide. So that's always a great place to refer to when you do have these questions and you're not quite sure what the requirements are. So there's 5 standards in a records review that will have only policy reviewed. So this is typically documented with the staff, program, or parent handbooks that get uploaded during that process. There are some standards that have both policy and additional documentation reviewed. So for example, the ongoing assessment standard will have policy reviewed. So in the handbook where they're talking about their policy for doing ongoing assessment, but then there will also be some additional documentation for some of the criteria. One example could be the WA Kids alignment tool, assessment training information, and that's just an example. Other documentation may include training certificates, job embedded professional development documentation, such as meeting agendas, notes, family engagement action plan. So there's kind of some variety. And I know that can be a little bit confusing. And so that's where the guide comes in really handy. And then as always, if there's any questions about that, you can always reach out to either a community liaison or to the SQL inbox, and we can kind of help you determine the ins and outs of those things. All right, next slide. Okay, there was this. So now we're kind of moving into the developmental screenings and that section of records review. So you'll find this in the records review guide on pages 5 through 7. And one of the question was, where can providers and coaches find early achievers' valid and reliable developmental screening tool list? And the answer is there's not a list. The most commonly used tools that we see are the CDC and the ASQ. And I will go ahead and drop the links to those in the chat. They are both free. And there is a specific Washington ASQ form that can be used. And in that form, families can go online and fill out the screening tool. And then as they're filling them out, there's a little thing, like an option in that specific form that says, do you want to share this with your childcare provider. So they can actually take that, the information that they've filled out, and forward it directly to their childcare provider straight from the website. So that makes that sharing piece a little bit more simplified. And then the CDC is the other common one. That's the Learn the Signs, Act Early screening that is on the Center for Disease Control website. So I will go ahead and put both of those links in the chat in case you want to access those. So here's the ASQ.
Hey, Amber, I see a question in the chat about what if they use the ESI?
One second. What if they use the early screening inventory tool? So if they're using a different tool and they're unsure if it's valid or reliable, they can email the SQL inbox and we take a look at these on a case-by-case basis and make our determinations there. Does that answer that question, Jess?
I've not seen any other, oh, I got a yes, Amber.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
All right, we can move on to the next slide. And then these are some questions regarding ongoing assessments. So these are in the Guide to the Records Review tool, pages 8 through 15. And just as a reminder, that Guide to the Records Review tool can be found on CC. So all of these resources today that we're referring to are in the CC resource library under Early Achievers resources and then Records Review resources. So for ongoing assessment 4, what does it mean to have dates and what dates need to be included? This was a question from the Jamboard. And for that specific question, no dates are required for ongoing assessment number 4. So that's an opportunity where you can look at that guide and kind of see what the specific requirements are for that standard. And then we had another question that said, a program has created their own assessment. Is the owner/creator of the assessment able to train her staff to meet the requirements? She is not a STARS trainer. So the requirement here is that the alignment tool would need to be completed for that assessment, and the owner or creator would need to be a STARS trainer in order to train others. In lieu of this, staff may also complete 4 hours of general training and assessment to meet this criteria. So there's a couple different ways there to meet the criteria. It's not just being trained by that particular trainer. You can also show a documentation of 4 hours in general assessment training, which can be shown via merit or on a college transcript, are a couple of options there. And we can keep moving right along. Oh, I have one question. Does the general training and assessment also need to be for STARS hours? No, it does not.
I have a question. I have a provider that took a curriculum training through Imagine, but it was only 3 hours she shared yesterday. So that 3 hours, she would have to prove that she has an hour, maybe through taking something through TS Gold or something else to make it 4 hours, or does the training have to be 4 hours altogether?
Do you mean a training and assessments? You mentioned curriculum.
Okay, well, the response to curriculum assessment, it was through a creative or curriculum stuff. Sorry, I'm on the wrong chapter there.
So for an assessment, it would need to be a 4-hour training. And
Okay.
if there was like 2 trainings that combine to make 4 hours, that's totally fine.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be like one 4-hour long. It
Perfect.
could be 4 1-hour trainings, and that would still meet the requirement. Tony, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so sorry, I'm a little bit discombobulated. We're talking about the dates on ongoing assessment 4, right? Because in the records review table, the Excel sheet, in the standard criteria column, it says blah, 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 and then dates must be included is what's in the table, is the reason because I've had programs that have worked off the table and that information is directly like.
I see what you're referring to. So I'm looking now at the guide. I'm on page 12, and there's a 90-day timeline.
I'm aware that they're different.
So I think, well, I think that that might be what is the confusion about the dates is that,
Yes. So is the table then to be disregarded?
I guess I'm not sure which one you're
It's
referring
the titled the
to tool.
sorry, I would have to go into CC to see what the title of it is, but it's, if you go into the records review, like, you know, drop down, and then on the other side, there's one that's an Excel sheet, not a PDF. And I can link it if I can find it. Hold on a
Okay,
second.
yeah, if you could link that, and then maybe you and I can follow up after the webinar.
Okay, and then the other one was about that. So she has completed the WA Kids alignment tool. So staff may also complete 4 hours of general training, but that it does have to be done by a STARS trainer.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So is the language in the guide going to be updated to indicate that? Because the way that it reads right now, it does seem like it doesn't say that. It says training.
Well, so I guess the answer to that is it needs to be something that's done by a STARS trainer or a college coursework. You could also submit like a transcript.
Okay, and I just like I feel like in the guide it doesn't look that. I don't know. I just don't read it that way, and I don't think I'm the only one. I'm the only one talking, but I think that's true of other people as well. That it looks like it could be similar, and I think we'll probably get to that question later. But you know, yeah, that's essentially my question. Like, she created this assessment tool. She aligned the assessment tool. She is the owner of the program who administers the tool. Like, she seems like the perfect trainer for it. And if there is a requirement that it be STARS or college credit, that it just say that, so that, you know, when this comes up, it's not on a coach to remember to tell them.
Absolutely. So it's perfect that you asked that question because we have been making some changes to the guide, and I will share that with you today. I will put that file in the chat for you. It's a PDF. It's in draft form. So just keep in mind that that is just for us to be using right now, and we can talk about it with coaches, but we're not sharing it until it gets finalized. It's still in draft form. So I'll put that in the chat here in just a minute. And you'll note on that there are additions made in green text. And it does, I'm looking at this right here, and we have added a college course can be used as evidence of training and assessment. Evidence of a college transcript can be submitted. And training that is not a college course must be conducted by a STARS approved trainer, but does not need to be a STARS training. So you wouldn't have to get STARS hours for it, but it needs to be an approved STARS trainer, if that makes sense.
It does.
So we have added that. So I will go ahead and add that into the chat. Also keep in mind, as you're looking at this updated one, I didn't want to confuse anybody, but as you're looking at this updated one, the page numbers may have slightly shifted because we've added stuff. So the page numbers that you see on the PowerPoint today and in the Jamboard, those are the page numbers for the published guide, not this draft one that we're adding information to. So just a little, I just didn't want to have a lot of confusion there. So
I have a question.
Mhm.
So if I'm understanding correctly, and maybe I'm understanding wrong, for like centers and corporations like KinderCare who have their own assessment tool and who do their own training in-house, that wouldn't count for training for assessment because the person giving the training is the director and not a STARS trainer? For like straight curriculum, they have people that will train. You can take like the 4-hour assessment training through Frog Street, but I don't know if that person's a STARS trainer because Frog Street is based in Australia. So are they not going to get the points even though they took the training?
So this whole thing about the 4-hour training and this whole thing about the ongoing assessment is only for when programs make up their own training.
Okay.
If they use Frog Street and you have a certificate that says Frog Street, then that's all you need. So if you use whatever, if it is a published assessment or curriculum, you need to complete the training that is required by whoever made it, right? And so I think that's why it's a little bit confusing for this situation of and like maybe this is something where you guys can make some comments and we can figure things out. But if a curriculum or assessment has a training, even if it, maybe Frog Street has a 3-hour training, but if that's the training, then that's what you need to complete. You need to complete whoever published its recommendation. This 4-hour training is kind of like because emergent curriculum or self-made curriculum, like someone who maybe they do have the qualifications, but we have no way of knowing that. You know, if someone made up their own assessment or their own curriculum, then we're saying that we would want to see at least a minimal training, a 4-hour training of like, at least the basics of a curriculum, at least the basics of an assessment.
Isn't
right?
that sort of what the curriculum alignment tool does to show that they do know the basics of those things?
That's showing that you can align it to the state's developmental guidelines.
Yeah. I wanted to add here, Jamie, that we have one of our PD coordinators joining us in a little bit. There's a lot of customized training, like this specific 4-hour to help providers meet requirements. And so I know that we have a lot of new coaches. And so our professional development coordinators across the state are going to be supporting us, and they're sending us those training informations. And so we're putting a guide by quality standards so that it's easy for the provider to kind of find what might be helpful. So just wanted to share that that's a resource that we'll be sending out on Monday in the weekly news update. But we do have a professional development coordinator that will join us toward the end to speak to some of these opportunities that they have out of the CCA PD system. Thanks, Amber.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm seeing a few questions in the chat. So are we talking about curriculums or assessments? Here we were kind of talking about both because there's a training piece associated with both. This particular slide is about assessments, but the questions were kind of about trainings on curriculum and assessment, which are both different requirements for that.
Right. They're both different requirements. So I'm getting really confused because we're bouncing back and forth and talking about them together. And it's really hard to follow where we're going.
So right now we're specifically talking about assessments.
Okay. And I was trying to get clarification on the training amount. I don't know if it's 4 hours or if it is per however long the person that creates it determines. But are we talking about a requirement to be trained in ongoing assessment like you would get at a college, or are we talking about being trained in the specific assessment tool that is being used in the program? What is the requirement?
If it is a self-created assessment, it can be either. So if it is a self-created assessment, the creator wants to create their own training for that assessment on how to use that specific assessment, that's okay. They need to be a STARS trainer to do that. If they're not a STARS trainer, you can also complete 4 hours of general training and assessment to meet that criteria. So some flexibility there. So it can be either or.
Okay. That would be, okay, thank you.
And then I'm seeing some questions about ASQ training across the state. I'm not sure if there's anyone who can speak to that. It's a 2-hour or 3-hour training. I am not sure if it's a 2-hour or 3-hour training.
There's a 4-hour training using the Ages and Stages questionnaire that is provided by some of our trainers across the state. And so there's that option that is 4 hours. There's also support via the B3QI coaching system. And so there's different options there, but we'll unpack that in just a little bit.
Really quick though, ASQ is not an assessment, it is a screening. that might be one of the reasons you're not getting points if you say you're doing ASQ for ongoing assessment.
Yes, so that's definitely one of the things that we commonly see is some confusion around a screening versus an assessment. And so we did talk about it at the last webinar. So if there's still some confusion around that, we actually had some great conversation around that at the last webinar. So I believe that recording is up on CC. If not, it will be up soon. So that would be a great place to kind of revisit. And I am happy to kind of answer any questions about the differences between those also. And then the guide to the records review tool also explains what is a screening and what is an assessment. So that might help with some of that confusion. Let's see, I'm just checking the chat here. So these slides, people are kind of asking for these slides. And Sandy, I think that you are going to share.
I was trying to type, but I'll just say it. Let me erase I was trying to type as fast as I could. I love the idea, and yes, in the future, we could really consider this. Just know that when we are harvesting your questions and your ideas, we do, ask our presenters to hold on because they're iterating till the last moment. I mean, even this morning, we were like, hey, I just kind of got this. Can we just quickly add this question in? And so when just know that when we're asking you to submit your questions or your ideas, we do give that flexibility to the presenters to say like up to the moment. And so you can expect this. Thank you. We ask our presenters if they're okay if we share. Amber was just generous to say yes. And so we'll once after this today, we're going to finalize to see if there's anything else to add, and we will be sharing it in the weekly news update. So you'll have it there. But thank you. I love that idea. When possible, we definitely want to keep that in mind.
Okay, I think we can move to the next slide. I know Dawn was having some technical issues. Dawn, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to take this first question here about ongoing assessment 3 and what is required. And we're going to go take a look at the guide to the records review tool together. So I'm going to pull that up and share my screen. So I'm going to take over screen sharing here for a minute. Maybe. I don't know if I have the option to.
Amber, let's take a look. Make sure you're a co-host. You should.
Oh, I think I
As a co-host. Mhm.
Okay, yes, I do. Okay, there it is. Okay, so we're going to look at ongoing assessment 3. There was a question that was sent in, and it was a multi-part question about this particular standard. And it's looking at training in the assessment tool, which kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. So in ongoing assessment 3, facility uses a formal assessment tool that aligns with WAKIDS. That's what we were just talking about in the alignment tool. So the WAKIDS assessment is the teaching strategies gold. So either they use that or they complete the WAKIDS alignment tool. And that assessment tool would need to apply to all age groups served by the program. So if they're using different tools in different classrooms, that's another layer that gets added. So they may have a couple of different alignment tools depending on which assessments are being used. And then in the guide here, it just really talks about, to earn 2 points. So if they use WAKIDS, evidence can be any one of the following: the assessment box set, copies or screenshots of the dashboard for each learning environment, a formal written policy stating that you use the WAKIDS assessment, or evidence that at least one lead teaching staff per environment is trained. If the program does not use the WAKIDS assessment tool, the WAKIDS alignment tool will be used as evidence. So the tool would be completed for each age group. And if multiple assessments are used in a learning environment, only the main assessment needs to be aligned. And then in the guide, it goes through, am I ready to opt into the standard? So these are also really helpful here and can be used as a worksheet as you're kind of helping your programs think about these different things. Are they ready to opt into it? If they are, great. You can check these off. You can take notes. If not, the notes section is also a great place to kind of talk about, what do we need to do? Or is this something that we want to eventually implement? And kind of taking those ideas and adding them there as well. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing because I don't have the chat up right now. There's probably questions in it. Oh, I don't think there are any new questions. Okay.
I don't see any, Amber, but if we missed yours, please let us know.
Okay, and then we can go back to oh, Tamara, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say really quickly, when you had that page open in the notes box, that's where one of my sites, they were writing what page number in their handbook that could be found, their evidence of where that could be found. I thought that was just kind of a nice thing that I would just share with others. If somebody doesn't want to write out, or the director doesn't want to write out a big thing there, she can just say, see page such and such. As the site itself was going through the document, making sure that they had all the parts that they wanted. Anyway, I was just sharing that. That's all.
Yes, thanks, Tamara. I think that's a great way to use that. And that's also, that would also be helpful as they're completing the records review tool and submitting their documentation. They could take that information and then put it in that little additional notes box and say, okay, I already know that I have this in place and it's on page 4 of my handbook. So I don't have to go search for it again when I'm submitting my documentation. I'm just going to put that in the additional notes so that it just kind of just makes the process flow a little bit more. Thank you for that suggestion. Okay, and then this next question we've been kind of talking about throughout today's webinar, and it's kind of around that equity piece. So I'm going to ask Dawn and possibly Sandy to jump in here.
Yeah. So the question is, the length, cost, and type of trainings for curriculum and assessments is not equitable. What steps are being taken to ensure equity and inclusion for all educators? And so there certainly is not an easy answer to this. And I think one of the things that we are trying to do is to gather those things that are inequitable from you all. Because what we can do is take it back to the state and push a conversation to get a solution that is more equitable. These things that you all have been raising today it makes it so clear. And I think the more that we can help state understand that, the closer it could get us to having a solution for it. Sandy, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I just want to keep encouraging, and I'll say it again toward the end, Dawn, that we have avenues to kind of share our concerns or suggestions for improvement, and we want to make sure that we're fully utilizing that. And so that's attendance at webinars, participating in chat, unmuting, using the SQL inbox, CQEL inbox, connecting with your CCA of WA program manager. And specifically, I'll say, I'm going to, really recommend the suggestion box versus the Curious inbox. The Curious inbox tends to be more for like specific, very individual situations, and that would be helpful for that. But when you see more of a global thing, then we really want to, lean into our advocacy realm and share those, because unless you're bringing those forward, it's really hard to create awareness without it. So thank you, Dawn. Just wanted to share that you have many avenues for lifting those situations, things that you feel are inequitable, and we will connect. But our promise is that we have recommended this topic to be discussed at the Early Achievers Strategy Table, which meets every Tuesday afternoon with DCYF leadership, and then our partners at the University of Washington Cultivate Learning and leadership here at the CCA of WA office. So please, please, please do reach out. Thanks, Dawn.
So just,
Of course.
of course, please send it. So if you have questions, please, talk to SQL or your community liaison. But if you have like comments about things that need to change, then definitely send those to DCWF, because, I can answer your questions, but I can't change the process. So please, I think that would be the difference. So it doesn't have to be a specific question, but if you just have a question or you can't find something in the guide or something like that, then please email SQL.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, and so for this one's about curriculum. In the guide, the published one, this is on pages 18 through 22 and also on page 43. So the question is, how do centers prove they were trained in an improved curriculum? For example, the OWL curriculum, when they were approved decades ago and can't track their certificate down. Amber, were you taking this one? Was that me? Sorry, I just started to do it.
I can take this one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So the answer for that is that training documentation is required in some form. So if they can't provide certificates, maybe thinking about if that training is recorded in Merit or somewhere else. And if no documentation can be found, the program can still meet the criteria for curriculum 1, but to receive credit for this particular criteria, we do need to have some documentation of the training on that curriculum. And then the next one is provide specific information on which actual TSG and creative curriculum training is valid. So there are lots of different trainings for creative curriculum and teaching strategies gold. And when records review submissions come in, we spend a lot of time on this, looking at these trainings and saying, okay, does this fit? Which training is this? Because there's so many different versions of them. So if there's a specific question, that is a great thing to email that SQL inbox. So that's kind of that individualized program specific question, because this is something that we spend a lot of our time looking at to determine, because there's just so many different versions.
Amber, and I'm looking at the some of the comments, and so I just want to be clear. Are we understanding correctly that it doesn't need to be a STARS hours if it's something like teaching strategies gold, it doesn't have to be. But if it's like an emergent curricula, or now moving to a different topic, like an assessment that someone developed, then there's two options. There's community-based STARS approved trainers that offer that. Again, we'll talk about with one of our trainers later in this webinar. So there's that option, and then there's also the college pathway as options that can meet that. And so generally the requirement's 4 hours for that piece. Okay, just want to make sure we're capturing that.
Yep, and that's all spelled out in the guide. So I'm looking at page 21 right now in the guide, and it talks a lot about those different pathways and what is required for that. All right, I think we can move on.
Amber, there's a question from Erica about ECAP. And so for ECAP contractors all assigned to ECAP classroom, are they eligible to receive in-service STARS hours after they've completed required creative curriculum and gold training in quorum? I'm not sure I fully understand, Erica or Amber.
I think the original question is actually mine. Again, hi, it's me. Because I have a program that's not ECAP. It sounds like ECAP contractors and ECAP teachers can get STARS credit for doing the online training that is that is the approved TS Gold and Creative Curriculum, if I'm reading what Erica said correctly. My program is not ECAP, but they do have TS Gold and Creative Curriculum. And this is not really records review necessarily. They were just like, since we're doing this training, can we get stars? And I was like, so it's a little bit separate. But if you know, can they?
And Sandy, yes, I was answering Tony's question just
Okay.
for
Thanks,
ECAP
Erica.
contractors. Yeah, we're offering in-service credit.
So that's not the online training situation.
So just for ECAP right now, if you are working with ECAP contractors, if they do complete any of the creative curriculum courses or gold courses online through Quorum, which is through their My Teaching Strategies account, they are able to complete a survey. And somebody did also share it with you, Tony. If they complete that survey, they have to be ECAP though, in order to be eligible. So at this time, we're only able to provide those in-service credits for that. But I'm sure if, you know, look, if they do, you know, actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm not sure. But for us, for ECAP right now, we are able to provide those in-service hours only for ECAP contractors at this time.
Thanks so much, Erica. And Erica, let's connect after and see how we can share some resources along for License Pathway as well.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you. Okay, where did we leave off here? Are we on this next one? Yes, okay, so next question. So this is more about curriculum alignment and providers that are using aligned curriculum that are not on the approved list, but the company has a detailed alignment. By not completing the CAT correctly, how can this be addressed? So the program can refer to that provided alignment. And I think we covered this a little bit earlier. The program can refer to that provided alignment. The idea behind the curricular alignment is that it's reflective of their actual program. And in the curricular alignment, just to reiterate, we aren't like grading that, or we aren't going through and looking at it to make sure that it was completed correctly or incorrectly. It's more an activity for the program to ensure that they are providing a robust curriculum for children, and also thinking about parents so that parents know that a robust curriculum is being implemented as the program says it is. So really kind of thinking about this as more of a tool for the provider and for the program, and less of something that just needs to be completed and be correct. And then that kind of leads into this next question about the inequity. We've really talked a lot about that, and it's creating a barrier for some who are using the curriculum as intended from receiving points. And just to reiterate, if the curriculum is included on the list of aligned curricula, no CAT is required. And so I know that that's been kind of one sticking point that we've been talking a lot about, and that is something that we are working on, that equity piece, and we definitely hear you. And so we are taking that to our strategy meetings and thinking about how that piece can be made to feel more equitable, you know, so that we all have a better feeling about that, and so that it is something that's actually useful to the program and doesn't feel just like another task to be completed. So we hear you on that, and we are doing everything within our power to modify that so that it's a little bit more equitable for everyone.
Yeah, and questions like this and what you're putting on the Jamboard and what's coming up in the chat, like all of that helps to make that argument and help it be understood. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is about instructional leadership. This is in the guide, pages 23 to 27. There seems to be some confusion about how to document instructional leadership requirements. Will you please spend some time going over this? Just wanted to do a quick time check-in. And do we have time to...
Amber.
instructional leadership log together?
Yeah, we can take a look, and again, I think we're almost at the end. We have about 4 slides left, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think we're good until 4:10.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So the instructional leadership log is used to document staff training. So, and their instructions. So this is the log that is, so this is in CC, and it can be downloaded, and then it's fillable, so you can fill it in. It gives you spots to fill in the date, the time met, the instructional leader's name, who participated, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, the content, and the summary. And these are tiny boxes. If you need more space, you don't have to use this form. It's just something we created as to make it easier for you. You can summarize in here. You can use a different form if that's easier. That's kind of up to you. Are there any specific questions about what's needed in terms of this instructional leadership criteria?
I'm not seeing anything in chat for you, Amber.
I have a question about this.
Right,
So for the site that did the records review, and they do twice yearly professional development days where they close the building and they have a STARS trainer come in and they do a lot of trainings around interactions and curriculum. And when they sent in the evidence, they only uploaded the teachers, like the attendance sheet. They didn't actually upload any sort of agenda to prove what they were doing. That's why they didn't get the points, correct?
Yes. I mean,
Because if you're not doing it on this
I don't
log,
know.
then it needs to be very specific.
Yeah, I don't know specifically in that case, but my guess is yes, because we do need to have some indication of what were they talking about. Because a lot of times, staff meeting or professional development days, it can include all kinds of different topics. They may be talking about, health standards or something that's not related to what we're looking at here. And so that's why we just ask for some content. And agendas can definitely be submitted along with that. So that's kind of another example of why you don't have to use this specific log. You could have an agenda and a sign-in sheet. And then if that has the participants, the instructional leader's name, the content, and the date and the time, then you're covered. So there's multiple ways of documenting that. This is just one way that we created to kind of give you something to simplify the process.
All right, thank you.
Amber, you have one question. Can communities of practice with coaches be added to this form?
Communities of practice with coaches. So that's going to come up in the job embedded professional development. Let's look at the guide. Do you mean like editing the form to add that? Or do you mean like, can that be used as evidence?
Alicia, I'm gonna need you to help us out here.
Can that be used as evidence?
Yes, let's look at the guide. So that's gonna, I believe, gonna be on page 25. So 3 instances of job embedded professional learning in the last 12 months. So yes, that could be something like a PLC that is being done within the program. The definition of the instructional leader is, and that's another question that comes up. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Pardon my scrolling, I'm trying to find the thing about. So it says in here, who's considered an instructional leader. Of course, now I can't find it. Here we go. And that when the PLC is set up, that's kind of the determining factor. So one of the questions that we've received is about coaching and if coaches can be considered an instructional leader. Coaches can help set these things up, but the intent behind instructional leadership is that it's someone who's in the program working there every day. So that's why coaches are not directly considered as an instructional leader for this specific criteria, but coaches can assist with that. So they could help set up a PLC as long as it's being ran by somebody who's in the program and kind of working their day to day. Does that answer your question?
Or like, for example, if there's a group of directors or providers that are working together in a PLC and the providers rotate who runs the PLC, but coaches are still there supporting in attendance, that would count.
I think that's a lot of the case for family childcare, where the providers bring up the agendas and coaches are just kind of supporting with like back office supports, logistics, sending out agenda or minutes or securing a location. They can be guest speakers if, they're doing a topic, but yeah, I think that sometimes is it, but I think it's in here where it describes where family childcare and the COPs that they participate are part of that, Amber.
Yes.
Yeah, right there.
There. So family childcare licensees who do not supervise staff may partner with other early learning professionals in their area for job embedded professional development. This can include a peer-led group of other FCC providers or a peer-led community of practice.
Cheryl, does that answer your question? So for those family childcare that are kind of independent, kind of like they're the only employees type thing, when they come together with other peers, other family childcare providers, and like as described, the coach is kind of more supporting back office supports, logistics, those kinds of things. It can be considered as an instructional leadership situation. So, and that was that's something that's been embedded just I want to say like maybe 7 years ago or something into the standard.
I do have another question about that because there are some kinder cares that they'll have their directors go to trainings and they might want to use that. But if all the staff are not there, it would not count, correct? If just the directors are attending, that wouldn't count because it needs to be everybody.
That's correct. Yeah. So yeah, instructional leadership in this sense, it's really the job embedded phrase is really key here for a center-based. It's in-house. Coaching is in addition to that. But it's really like in-house who continues to be kind of that in-house instructional leader. So yeah, in your example, you're exactly correct.
So like maybe your program supervisors or a couple of my programs actually have somebody that's kind of like a coach, but they work for their agency. And they come in periodically. Would that count?
Yes. And we see that commonly. So kind of like a program supervisor or a curriculum coordinator or kind of whatever that title is, but somebody who oversees multiple sites and that's their job within that organization, that would definitely count because they are part of that organization. They are on the ground in the classrooms working with teachers in their day-to-day work. And that really is the idea behind that job embedded professional development, is that it's happening in your day-to-day work and it's part of what you do. It's not, something that's just kind of a one-off extra training.
Okay. And then what about lead teachers that have regular volunteers that they're responsible for, or not volunteers, students that are, I can't remember what you call them right now. Students that come in from the college that are learning to be teachers, and the lead teachers are supervising and coaching them while they're all working together. Interns.
Like
what about that type of situation? Because I have a program that regularly, like daily, has interns in their classrooms.
The documentation that we're specifically looking for here would not relate to an intern because it's for the lead teachers in the classroom.
Okay.
So the that lead teacher is kind of serving as a mentor for those interns.
Yeah.
But is that lead teacher also having job embedded professional development for themselves? And
well, I think so, because they're practicing leadership skills, but I guess it would depend on how they framed it.
Yeah, and it would depend on the content. Is it something that is it set up kind of like a PLC, or is it that they are mentoring those interns?
Yeah, they're in the classroom.
for this specific criteria, we're looking at, does the lead teacher have that job embedded professional development? And are they having that opportunity to have someone mentor them?
Okay.
Okay, I think we can move to, oh, there's this other second question on the slide. Can we go back to the slide deck? I'm going to stop sharing. So the second question was about documenting teacher start dates and hire dates. And there is some, that can be confusing because a lot of times teachers are hired as maybe a floater or an assistant teacher, right? And then they get promoted to a lead teacher. And sometimes those dates can be tricky to track. And what we are looking for the instructional leadership is the date from the start date as the lead. That's used to determine that the instances of job embedded professional development. So we are looking at JEPD for lead teachers. And if the teacher has been a lead for less than 12 months, then the instances of JEPD that are required are prorated. Because if they started as an assistant and then didn't get hired as a lead until 2 months before they submitted their records review, then we would only be looking at those 2 months of when they were a lead. So they wouldn't need to have the full 12 months. So that's kind of that, there's been some confusion about that and kind of how to document those different dates. So it really is when they start as the lead teacher in that classroom.
I have a question regarding that. So what if it's an assistant director that's moving to the director position and they've been doing it for longer than a year?
What if it's an assistant that's been moved to
Yeah, so they're still in a leadership role and they've been at the site for 2 years now, but they were an assistant director, not a lead teacher, and now they're working as the director.
So for this particular one, we're looking at lead teachers. So I'm not sure.
Sorry, I was thinking I'm on the wrong thing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I think we can move on to the next one. Okay, so we've answered a little bit of this already, talking about PLCs and coaches as instructional leaders. I'm not sure that we need to keep going on this one. So unless there's any other questions, I think we can.
Seems like there's a good understanding there, and there's one comment, but you can move on. I'll review the comment, Amber,
Okay.
and I'll bring it back if it's that. But
Thank you.
we'll definitely, like I said, we'll make these available as well.
Okay, so next slide, please. All right, preventing suspension and expulsion. There was some questions about this regarding the training that's required. And in the guide, it talks about training being required for positive social and emotional development, reducing challenging behaviors, and trauma-informed care. And this is an update that we have added to the guide. It is all 3 of those on a yearly basis. So yes, it is a lot of training. All 3 training topics are required to be provided. The policy should explain how teachers are trained on these topics on an annual basis. So this standards requires evidence in the form of policy. So this is not one where we're looking at the actual training records, but in the policy, in the handbook, that's what we're looking at, a policy that there's annual training on all 3 of these topics for staff. And I think we can keep going. All right, moving on to strengthening and supporting families. Okay, so this is one that, Sandy, I might pull you in here a little bit because the strengthening and supporting families has changed slightly. So this strengthening and supporting families self-assessment used to be part of early achievers. Now that has changed and it is part of licensing. So I will go ahead and drop the link to the WAC in there. because I know that there's been kind of some confusion about that. I don't know if Sandy, you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, so in part of our communications plan, one of the things that we'll be raising is just bringing this back to awareness, because there is a time commitment to this. There's like a 1 year mark and a 6 month mark, so you have to be really specific, like where it falls. And so the WAC now asks, you know, the provider to complete a strengthening families assessment or something that's kind of closely related. And so we're asking, DCYF is putting out like a newsletter now. One's going to be going out on the 29th, I believe. Leah, correct me if I'm wrong. But I know that one of the newsletters is going out soon, and our ask is that this is included as a way to grow awareness. And we're also going to be including it in BizEdge and in our media, because I think a lot of people are getting real confused about this piece. So Amber, that's just what I wanted to share. Kind of we've observed the same and heard the same, and so asking if it could be included. I think Felicia has a great idea around this. Felicia, can you join us in the conversation?
Me?
Felicia, you have an idea to share?
Oh, yeah, I do have an idea. I think one important thing is to connect the WAC and how it aligns with early achievers, because there are some things that may have been communicated as kind of optional, but there's like quite a few things that are required by the WAC. And although a lot of these things should probably already be practiced or something, but a lot of providers come in with different like maybe for family or something like that. So now that the WAC is definitely in play, and a lot of providers don't really hear about the WAC until like a licensor comes to visit, and then they have pages and pages of things they're written up on, and they may have not even known that they were supposed to do it, or it was like so many years ago, especially like the self-assessment that they do when they first open. And then, you know, going into the program profile report, and then like records review. So all that stuff that happens within the 3 years, you know, the early achievers aligns with the WAC, even especially starting with child outcomes, you know, and then of course that has to do with like the child assessments and things like that. So I think definitely somehow making them both like in the communication, really the importance of the WAC, because it just seems like a lot of stuff just goes back to the WAC at the end of it all. So yeah, that was a little bit of my idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, wherever in our communications we can help people connect the dots, absolutely. Because just even going to a website, it gets there's a lot to kind of look into. So I appreciate that, Felicia. Thank you. Amber, I think we're yeah, let's continue. I'm right now I'm gonna drop the assessment. It's available online, and so I'm happy to drop that in here.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandy. And just as a reminder, the Strengthening Family Self-Assessment isn't the only assessment that can be used in the WAC. That's one option. So there were some questions regarding language. There are other self-assessments that are available in a variety of languages, and for specifically for early achievers and looking at this strengthening and supporting families, we are looking at not at the self-assessment, we are looking at the goals and the action plan. So we're asking programs to take that self-assessment that they've done as part of licensing and create some goals and reflect on those goals and note their progress. And that's what we are looking for. So we're not looking at the actual self-assessment. And that is a change from previous to now. And then the main thing with this is that the goal needs to be dated within the last 12 months. And that's calculated from the date the records review request for evaluation is submitted. So if it's over 12 months, then it's over 12 months. It won't meet that criteria. And these criteria, there are, I believe, 3 in strengthening families. They are dependent on each other. And again, this is all in the guide. But if you don't get the first point, you can't get the other ones. So they are dependent on each other. They build on each other. And that's because you are creating a goal, and then you're going back and you're reflecting on that goal and setting an additional goal. So they just naturally build on each other with how that works.
Can I say something about that?
Mhm.
So my provider did the RRT and they do their goal setting in like the final quarter of the year before the next year. So for example, they do all their goal setting in like October of 2022 for 2023. So they had documented it and started the date as in like October something 2022. But when they submitted their records review, it was November of 2023. So that goal was no longer valid because it wasn't within that 12 months. So even though they did all the work in 2023, they didn't get the points because the goal was set outside of the 12 months.
And I think the intent behind that is, and yes, I completely, that's frustrating. And that's definitely valid that that's frustrating. The intent behind that is that there are continuous goals and, they're being looked at and checked on yearly. And so that's I guess that's frustrating. There has to be some parameter for us in terms of looking at it. And so that 12 months is just what we have set.
Yeah. And I get it. And they were frustrated at first, but it's just all these things that we're learning, like the little things, like make sure it's within the 12 months of the day that you submit, because in the guide, it says calendar year, but then if you look a few sentences down, it says that 12 months is calculated based on the day that they submit their records review. So the wording's a little bit weird. So yeah, if you look in the guide to the records review under strengthening families, it says that you must have one goal dated for every 12 months, for every 12, for like the previous calendar year. But then a couple sentences down, it does say that the 12 months is calculated based off of when they submit their records review.
Okay, I wrote that down. I'm gonna go look at that because yes, that sounds confusing. So that's a great
Yeah, so
suggestion.
I was just I'm telling my people to read every line.
Yeah, definitely. So
I have kind of a follow-up on that a little bit. And it would be that if Cheryl's program had, for instance, it was November 2023 and they were able to submit their evidence of completing the goal and then their reflection of their 2023 goal, would they have been able then, because it sounds like they do their planning in October, could they have submitted their planning for the 2024 year? They'll have 3 pieces, but they just aren't all linked to the same goal. Does that make sense? Because the part of it has expired. But this is a piece of evidence that shows that they are still moving forward. That's only as far as they got. Does that make sense?
I think so. I
Well,
really think that would be a case by case basis. And I think that would be a great question to send to the SQL inbox and something for us to consider. That's something we haven't come across yet.
Yeah,
So,
they did the goal setting outside the 12 months, but all of the work and the evidence was all dated within the 12 months.
Yeah.
So the answer that we got from SQL was the original start date has to be within the 12 months. It doesn't matter that they did all the work within the 12-month period. It has to be, the start date has to also be within that year.
So they can't start. And that's what I'm asking. Can they start the next goal if they've finished, if they finished the thing that they were doing in July, and then they've got all till November that they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, but really ideally what you want them to do is start on the next goal. So it's supposed to be a circle. So I don't know, whatever. Okay.
The next goal is, I'm not sure I'm quite understanding. The next goal could be used if they're continually going back to that. It sounds like that's almost like another goal that's being set. So then that date would
Yeah.
be within the 12 months.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. So if the first goal was setting up a bulletin board, you say, you know, we're going to set up a bulletin board. Then you set up the bulletin board, then you reflect on it. So that's 1, 2, 3. But you've fallen outside of the 12 months, you know, to do these 2 things. But then you start your next goal. Now, you know, we set up the bulletin board, we did these 3 pieces. Now our new goal is we're gonna, I don't know, have a barbecue. And so you haven't got to the next 2 pieces, but you still have all 3 pieces. They're just from different goals because you're continuing on the process.
And I mean, to be completely honest, I don't have a great answer because I'm not sure of that specific scenario. I would say if you have specific questions for your program, to email the SQL inbox and we can address those on a case-by-case basis. I'm sorry, I don't have a more specific answer for that.
I think that's a great answer, Amber. So thank you for that. I think let's bring it to the SQL inbox and see what we can brainstorm together. Yeah, it looks like we're running out of time here, Amber, but I see Yadira has her hand up. So Yadira, I don't know if you'd like to unmute or put it in chat. I'd like to invite you if you have something you'd like to share briefly.
Yes, it's regarding the straightening tool. The way that I am using it is like an ongoing assessment, like the previous person was saying. When we do the action plan, the form has that we can establish up to 3 goals. So I think it will depend the term of the goal is that is a short goal or long goal, because when we do the assessment, or when the provider or the administrators do the assessments, also has like very like long goals, like it's a center, like maybe integrating like family engagement, to start integrating like parent meetings, family nights, things like that. So I think it's gonna depend the type of goal that we guide the administrators of the home providers to establish. And I think it's like she was saying, it's an ongoing assessment, because when they finish one goal, we should or they should establish a new goal. So with a different date and a different date to complete it. So when by the time that they submit the records review, they will have a goal that will meet the requirements to be rated.
Yes, that's a great point about kind of length of goals and long and short-term goals. And so there are multiple spaces in that family action plan form where you can kind of look at some different dates. And if it's not within those 12 months, it may not be a standard that you want to opt into, or it could mean that you want to set a new goal and submit that. So I know that we're at the end of our time today. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the engagement and all of your questions and using that Jamboard. I'm going to put the link for that into the chat again. And just as a reminder, that's open until May 3rd. So please continue adding to that. We will, you know, we look at that and we take your feedback and do as much as we possibly can to incorporate that and answer your questions. So hopefully this.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you for you know, being open to doing a deeper dive with us. It, you know, definitely felt it from the last one, and I think that this has unpacked a lot of the questions. Thank you out there, coaches, and trainers and coach supervisors, for being super engaged. Whenever we, you know, kind of invite you to help us with what are your questions, concerns, what are you thinking about? We appreciate that we always get a high rate of engagement. So appreciate you with that. Amber, I want to remind everyone that we have blueprints both on CC and BizEdge. Just again, to provide kind of a structure for engaging reflection and policy, which is a big part of this process in records review. And just asking a lot of great reflective questions to guide the conversation. So want to make sure that we call out that resource. And then also just wanted to highlight professional development. I think one of our state approved trainers is here with us, Adrian Wingo. Are you still here? I know there we had Nayeli was going to be here. She is our professional development coordinator from the CCA of King and Pierce County.
I'm here, Sandy.
Hi, Adrian. Welcome, welcome. Adrian, thank you so much for stopping by. We've been talking about records review and let's go back. We're not quite there yet. And so there's a resource that we're putting together. So wanted to add you to the top of the updates list. Can you share a little bit what is going on in training and how training can support providers in meeting records review?
Sure. So we've done some work around, which essentially is what you've already done, is identifying what are the parameters, what needs to be happening, what specific trainings are needed at what frequency, the dosage, all of that. So our next step is to look at all of our training library, or just kind of start diving in and really matching our trainings to the EA standard. And we have thought about kind of marking those. So when a provider signs up for something, they know that it could connect to this. We don't want to make any guarantees. So we want to be very careful with our language, but that this could lead to, kind of following the bouncing ball.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks, Adrian. And thank you to all the trainers. We had an ask of all the trainers statewide. Hey, can you help us put together a resource for our coaches and providers? And of course, they're wonderful. They said yes. And we're putting that together and it'll go out in the weekly news update on Monday. So thank you for that. And it's by category. So you'll be able to see kind of what's available. And if you have any questions, please connect with your training team or your professional development coordinator out in the regions. They are just experts in this area and can give you good answers. So we are, all right, Ms. Patty, I'm ready to do some updates. And anything else in chat? Okay, yeah, awesome. All right. Thank you so much for letting us know if you're neutral or if you're thumbs down. We'll make sure to connect with you. Awesome. Okay. Love it, Tony. All right, we'll still connect with you. It's all right. It's all good. All righty. So, Ms. Patty, we're moving into early learning updates. If we could share the screen. Fantastic. So we just did updates with Adrian Wingo. We appreciate you. And so, awesome. Yeah, we can do that. And now in our next update, we have a data bingo. And it's a little bit around something that we call cleaning up our data hygiene. And we know the why behind data. It's just really important. And it's a primary way that we demonstrate how we are great stewards of our public funding. And so part of that comes with the responsibility of the services that we provide, that we document what those services look like so that we can inform not only our funders, but also inform families and our legislators why they need to continue to invest in early learning. And so you're key in providing us that robust data that helps us tell the story. I have to tell you, currently, we're in this place where we have an opportunity to really shine. And part of that is that, we need to make sure that the data is matching the story that we're sharing out in the field, either through advocacy or just an opportunity one-on-one to speak to our funders and our champion legislators. So for you today, we have a little bit of a data bingo and we have a coach challenge. So we're gonna drop something in chat for you just now. And the challenge is open up that bingo, and between now and Friday, May 3rd, I think Friday is May 3rd. Could someone kind of help me out and verify that? I know it's not Cinco de Mayo, but I think it's May 3rd. We're going to invite you this next week or so to participate in Data Bingo by completing the activities for your caseload. And if you are part of the top 5 coaches from your region to submit this, you're gonna be entered into a door prize, and we'll have some gift cards for you. So again, a challenge has been shared for all of our beautiful coaches. Data Bingo, please click on the link. We'll also share it in the weekly news update. And the challenge is to complete those activities for your caseload by May 3rd and submit it into the Early Achievers inbox by May 3rd, and a prize for the top 5 in each region. Yes, it should, Blanca. We thought we fixed that. You get extra credit if you cross it out in red and fix it in a pretty font color. Just for you. All right. And so just wanted to share that, again, suggestions for improvement in early achievers. We continue to have, we have a team that's looking into that, managing that inbox. And so please do share. That's one other outlet where you can continue to provide your suggestions for improvement into the QRIS. And so I will add the link in chat in just a minute here. Oh, there you go, Miss April. Thank you. So awesome to have that. We're excited to share on behalf of our partners at the University of Washington Cultivate Learning that CC is launching in Spanish on May 1st. So that's next week. And so you'll have access to the site completely in Spanish, and you'll be able to locate all of those resources that are available. There's a tip sheet also that you'll find there, but check it out. Yeah, it's just, we just keep getting better, keep growing. It's awesome. Thank you for your feedback. If you do find any mistakes or you have any feedback on the Spanish site, please don't hesitate to reach out to them. You're going to see a contact us button on CC. And if you notice something that you feel like maybe you'd like to let the team know, please do use that contact us button on CC. And they'd love to hear from you so that we can make it just such a useful tool for our providers. And I know that while they continue to work on that, you could still find all of the great Somali resources in the recognition resource materials. So we'll keep going. Congratulations to Cultivate Learning for making that happen. With Canvas rollout, I wanted to share that our next rollout region, so we're starting out small and kind of just testing out, trying to like identify the bugs. The next region that will be receiving invites from Canvas is our central region. You'll be receiving an invitation in your email inbox on Monday, February 29th. It's not spam, so please keep an eye and look out for that. We'll be fully launched and keep bringing in regions through August. And so we'll make sure that you're all on board before we sunset Schoology at the end of September. All right. Last but certainly not least, we're excited to see you at Elevate. This year's virtual platform, October 21st to the 23rd. Our theme is liberatory leadership, and we're diving deeper, strengthening and sustaining equitable practices. The RFP is launching on Monday, and it'll be open through May 31st. Help us make it the best Elevate yet. Let us know. Please recommend presenters, share it out, and connect with your networks. There's going to be updates in the weekly news update coming up where you can gather more information. Thank you so much. I see, okay, thank yous. Maybe something about Lululemon, I'm not sure. Thank you all so much. It's the end of the day, and you guys have brought some great energy. We really appreciate you. We appreciate our partners at Cultivate Learning. You're awesome to work with. Thank you all. Take good care of yourself, and we'll see you next month.
Sandy.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
you said February 29th. That's what we were commenting about.
Thank you. I think it's late for me too, Tamara. My bad. For the RFP, Tamara, what would I do without you? For the RFP, it's April 29th. It's going to launch. Yes. Let's not go back to Groundhog's Day. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
for not leaving me alone. I love that you're listening. Thanks, guys.